Welcome, everybody, to the top players of 2023. I was about to say top 10, but I'm already cheating, as you can tell by the title of this video. We're going to call it the top players of 2023 because I decided to add an 11th player. The way this works is we're mostly ranking based on RLCS stuff. So I could have probably made this back in September, but, you know, hey, we're going to do it at the end of the year because why not? It's just a little bit easier. Number 2, only one player per team. You know, maybe barring one exception, which you guys could probably figure out because they were on multiple teams. So, with that being said, let's get into the top 11 players of 2023. We will start with LJ at number 11. I was going back and forth. I was trying to think, and as you guys probably already know by the YouTube thumbnail, we have Kiileerrz, Atomic, and LJ today. And I was like, I can't really move these guys around, or I couldn't decide exactly how I wanted to put them. They're all in here for different reasons. LJ, I think it's the honorary mention, I guess, for top 10, mostly because of that World Championship main event performance, where he was just insane. He was number 1 goals per game, number 1 goals and assists per game, number 1 score, number 1 saves per game as well, all at the World Championship main event. He really did it all for Space Station in that event. Do I think he was necessarily the greatest player throughout the year? No, but when it comes down to it, World Championship is the most important event, and LJ really put up a performance that pushed Space Station into the top 8 of Worlds, which was a fantastic finish for them. They obviously, in spring, were no slouch as well, getting the number 1 seed out of North America. But as I think many people have mentioned, that number 1 seed in North America in that spring split was kind of like, it was barely number 1 seed. It was kind of like, sure, they're number 1 seed, but are they really? Yada, yada, yada. So I wouldn't call them the number 1 team necessarily in all of NA, but LJ really performed at the World Championship when it mattered most. It was really cool to see. We'll see what he does next year, playing with Chicago. So it's going to be interesting for Space Station going into that. But number 11, basically the honorable mention of our top 10 list, will go to LJ. His name is very short, so it's like it doesn't look that good on this graphic. To be fair, I made the graphics. They're not that fancy. So let's continue. Moving on. We're going to go to Atomic at number 10. G2 was weird this season. Winter was honestly not that bad for G2. They went to the Winter Major. They lost to the 2 finalists. So you can't really blame them too much. They were in a group of FaZe. Then they also lost to K-Corp in the bracket, which, you know, wound up being the 2 grand finalists. So it's like, Winter Major, sure. Like, it was a better result than it looks like. And then obviously spring, they missed out in the wild North American spring split. They came back to Worlds, and so everyone's thinking, are they done? They were like mid all year. It felt like they were not that great. They were not one of the best in NA, but they would survive, right? They would make those top 5 pushes. Atomic was a big part of that for sure, but it wasn't as good of a year as I thought Atomic could have had on G2. So yeah, it was like odd. We'll see what Atomic does this year. Obviously going to be a very exciting time for G2 fans out there with the new roster, but he was, what happened with G2 was basically at the World Championship, they started to perform. He was basically the wildcard MVP, put up insane numbers. Number 1 in goals per game, number 1 in score per game. He had high assists as well. I believe his goals plus assists might have been number 1, or at least top 3. So I didn't write that one down. But G2's number 1 offense by half a goal over everyone else in that wildcard. So I'm pretty sure he probably had number 1 in goals plus assists. So Atomic, a fantastic wild card performance. Then on the defensive side, G2 really looked strong at the World's main event. They played solid defense as a team, but goal participation-wise, Atomic was still number 4 amongst all players. So when they did have to score, Atomic was there putting in some shots. We all know he's the best on that squad. I think maybe there's a small argument for maybe a JNEPS at times, but I think Atomic, overall, solid year, but we expected more, right? Like, I think there was moments even at the World Championship where he made some mistakes, but overall, Atomic, rank at number 10. We'll see where he ranks next year. We'll see if his teammates actually rank instead of him, but still, either way, Atomic is a great player. I expect great things out of him next season. Moving on. We have Kiileerrz at number 9. It was hard to place Kiileerrz. I went back and forth. Could have placed him maybe slightly higher, slightly lower. Kind of went back and forth. But the MENA MVP, which I think means a lot, winter and spring was a fantastic performer regionally. He's basically the offensive catalyst on that Rule 1 squad that would play a ton of defense and play defense very, very well. His twin brother, obviously, Roas, would be more on the defensive side. He'd be more on the offensive side. So it was kind of hard to place because sometimes when you have defensive teams or defensive players, it's hard to get them noticed. And like it's obviously harder to talk about them because obviously eye test is great, but to put up numbers is a little bit hard. But I think they're the best moment for Rule 1 and Kiileerrz was that spring run that got them into the main event directly, got them an extra MENA team, which I think probably means more to them than getting to the main event directly. It was a fantastic top 4 run, and Kiileerrz was fantastic. He was number 5 in goals per game, number 1 in score per game at that spring major. So he really performed. Winter was one of those things where it's like they perform well Rule 1, but they couldn't get over that Falcons hump. Then they finally did it. Then unfortunately, though, at the World Championship, and this is where like it was hard to exactly choose where to put them. Rule 1, a 9th place finish there, like pretty disappointing for what they wanted to do, obviously after a top 4 in spring. So like an up and down year, but Kiileerrz was always a top performer, one of the best players in MENA overall. So I decided at number 9. You guys let me know what you guys think of where I put 9, 10, and 11. Do you think these guys should have been higher? Should they have been lower? We'll have to see. But it's going to be interesting to see with Kiileerrz next season with him and Roas. They're kind of branching out, doing their thing. We'll see what type of roster comes of that. I think there were some rumors going around, but I haven't been focused too hard. It's holiday season, right? So we'll see what the roster lands like. We now know RLCS will begin late January of 2024. So teams have to start coming together. Obviously, 13-year-olds are now in the mix. Probably won't cause too much of an issue for any of the top teams, but, you know, it's out there. 13 or 14-year-olds can now participate. But here's my list so far. Kiileerrz, Atomic, LJ. I couldn't decide on just 10. LJ could have been knocked off, but, man, that main event was fantastic, especially when they played Rule 1. He looked amazing. So I'm up in the air. I'm still undecided on this 9, 10, 11. It could have went so many different ways. Like LJ, I guess, kind of gets the head-to-head on Kiileerrz. I'm sorry, Kiileerrz. I keep calling him Kiileerrz. I'm sorry. I apologize now. It's Kiileerrz. The spelling throws me off. All right. It's a lot of I's and E's and R's. It's just a lot. That's going to do it. Top 11 players of 2023 will start with LJ, Atomic, and Kiileerrz. So let me know who you think will be the next people on the list. We'll do 2 from here on out per video. So who are the next 2? I bet you guys can guess at least one of them. I think you can do it. Might have something to do with the same name over here, you know, hint, hint. But that'll do it for me. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.